coming to you live just outside of Polokwane. In fact, we are in Mankweng right now at the Mankweng Magistrates Court. We're just after 9 o'clock this morning. We are, of course, expecting to see the three suspects in the murders of Lucia Ndlovu and Maria Makato really appearing, applying for bail. We did speak to the NPA spokesperson in Limpopo, Mashudi Malabizangi, who essentially has made it very clear that the NPA will be opposing bail. Still quite early, though, outside of the magistrates' court here, and but we are expecting quite a number of civil society organizations to be out here up in arms over the violent manner that these two women were killed. You'd remember, of course, that the shooting took place with one eyewitness as well, who was already spoken out to the media, that being the husband of Lucia Ndlovu, who says that the attack happened so quickly that one shot was fired in the air, and then shots rang off. He was shot as well. His wife was shot, and so was Maria Makato. And another thing that we've heard as well from the husband is that his intestines were outside of his body after that incident, so he continues to heal. But this has again raised the attention around attacks against women in South Africa. And to take that discussion further, we are now joined by Minister Sindisiwe Chikunga, who's the Minister for Women and Children in the Presidency. Minister, good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm keen to hear your thoughts. I mean, a lot of us hearing about the story for the very first time. Absolute shock and horror. Your initial reaction, Minister?
Thank you very much, Naledi, for having us. Let me greet all South Africans and wish all women a happy Women's Month, even if we are towards the end of the month. What you are actually saying not only shocked women in South Africa, but the world as such, but it actually confirms the fact that we still have serious racialism in South Africa. We still have a lot of sexism in South Africa. But we still have people who think that they are above the law and have deep hatred for some other racial groups, because this is what you can actually tell out of this. Because why would you kill a harmless woman and kill them in the manner in which they were killed? And we stand with NPA in opposing the bail against those murderers, cold-blooded murderers. And we think that the sentence must be very harsh, so that the would-be criminals are also learn a lesson out of the sentencing of that case.
Yeah, Minister, I might, take the opportunity to challenge you a little bit, though, because at the same time as we can all agree that this was an absolute heinous act, there's still questions around how we got to a point in our society where mothers were so desperate for food that they were willing to trespass and gather at a dumping site to gather expired foods that had been dumped. I mean, is there still some work to be done? And can we, at this point, say that to some extent, to a great extent, we are failing some of the most vulnerable women in our country?
The fact of the matter is we have a country with two economies. President Mbeki would say that we have tried as government to ensure that nobody in South Africa goes hungry. The grants that we give to our people, even if they are not adequate, but are actually aimed at doing that. Indeed, women are still the face of poverty, the face of unemployment. Statistics are telling us that if you look at, for instance, youth unemployment at more than 60%, if you look at the latest statistics, the face of that, the majority of them are women. And that is why you'll hear such stories. It's still happening here in South Africa. But that does not mean that anyone then will treat any person like a criminal. And you therefore, because of the vulnerability of women, you therefore think that you can kill them just like that. Surely those people, those white persons, those murderers there, they knew exactly that those women were harmless, those women would not do anything. For the very fact that they were actually collecting food, which no one was going to use, not even their pigs were going to use. It actually confirmed their vulnerability at that time. And then why would you kill them? There's no reason whatsoever. And that is why I believe that the law must take its course. And as the department, we will definitely find time when the case starts to to go and attend, so that we put pressure as well to say, no, but these people should not actually take it, be granted bail. And therefore we encourage everyone who is around that court, women of South Africa, to go and support with placards to say these criminals must never be granted bail, because they will go out and do it again. If they can do it once, they will do it again. We don't even know whether it's the first time that they are doing it. Yes, indeed, like I've said, women are the face of poverty and unemployment. However, a lot is being done to help us deal with that. We're trying everything possible, particularly the farm women, because when sometimes we talk about the poverty, we then talk about rural women, but there is a special area, which is special sector, which is farm women, which are even worse than ordinary rural women, worse than ordinary peri-urban women, worse than ordinary urban women. And I think sometimes they are left out, and that is why we are actually separating them. We're putting them as a sector that over and above rural women, we have got farm women, and they too require some attention. And the department is actually looking at that to say, how do we empower them? Starting with education for young women, sending them to school and universities or tertiary institutions, so that they too can benefit from your NSFAS of this world and so on.
Yeah, but what is the challenge with synergizing programs that are taking place on the ground? I mean, at provincial level, where you do have a provincial social development, for instance, one would hope that a ministry such as yourself would be keeping a close eye on even what DSD does at provincial level, at local government level. I mean, where have the difficulties been for your particular department, for women, children, people with disabilities, the most vulnerable in our society, to access the services that they need close to where in the communities that they are in?
Our responsibility is to advocate. Our responsibility is to streamline, is to monitor, is to evaluate. We do that as we provide leadership in social transformation, economic transformation, ensuring the implementation of participation of women in all these areas. And we will therefore work with across the sectors. We have to ensure that the public service deliver money on the mandates when it comes to these vulnerable groups, that is women, youth, and persons with disabilities, that the private sector, that is the civil society out there, they deliver. So it is indeed a huge task that we are planning to implement. And like I say, it's still being in the department, but we have actually said we're going to put in place measures that will force everybody to comply by the law. If we speak access, we will try and will ensure that departments make all their services accessible, particularly to these vulnerable groups. It's not going to happen overnight. In some areas, we know for sure that departments have tried to make services accessible, but in other areas, they've not been able to do that. I can talk about transport, for instance. When you talk about universal transport access, it's still not there. But of course, already now everybody is aware of that. So the first thing will be to ensure that people are aware of their roles and ensuring that these vulnerable groups have access to these services, but also ensuring that where people are not playing their role, we then enforce them, because at least we now have the legal framework that allows us to do that, including the policies that are there. When you talk about the rights of persons with disabilities, we definitely have now a policy on that, including the legislation. When you talk about even gender-based violence and ensuring that it is prevented, because that's what we want to do, Naledi, to prevent gender-based violence, then to intervene when it has already happened. And we already have legislations starting with the Domestic Violence Act, to quite a number of them, even the recently passed one, which is the National Council on Gender-Based Violence and Femicide, which was signed by the President this year. It gives us powers to act on these things, but also to ensure that everyone in government, everyone in the private sector, everyone in civil society, they play their role. And therefore, that we hope it's going to minimize some of these things that are happening, and of course are affecting our vulnerable groups.
Right. Let me ask you this, Minister. There's, of course, the challenge that you have in that you have just taken over this ministry for women, children, and people with disabilities. When we look at the horrific incidents that we see where women are concerned, and again, we need to keep reiterating that some of the discussions we're having in this particular story may be very difficult for sensitive viewers. But two women's bodies in a pigsty speaks to, I suppose, work that definitely needs to be done to empower women so that they don't end up in positions like the two women, unfortunately, out of desperation, found themselves in. But do you have a sense that your ministry is a forgotten ministry? Just recently, we spoke to your deputy minister and talked about how very few resources are given to the Department of Women.
We are definitely engaging National Treasury in as far as that is concerned, because my thinking is that I believe people are not aware of the magnitude of work that this department is supposed to do. Like, if you talk about the advocacy, for instance, advocacy role, it's not only about talking, but it's also about actioning some of the things. You're talking about these women, for instance. I just want to make an example. It would make sense if we go there to court, but also we go to the areas where they come from to actually do our own assessment and see as to why they had to actually do everything, to actually go to an extent of looking for food out there is the level of poverty. But in order for you to do that and intervene where you can, but in order for you to do that, you need resources. So yes, indeed, the resources are an issue which we are engaging National Treasury on. Whether you speak human resources, we need that. Whether you speak financial resources, we need that. Whether you speak technology and so on, we need that, because some of the work will depend on the availability of these resources. And we believe that National Treasury has heard us, and we are going to be considered for better resources so that we can have staff that is supposed to do the work, that is supposed to research, because you're not going to intervene on matters when you don't even proper data, you don't have scientific data for you to know as to what to do. You're not going to talk about young people who are unemployed if you don't have scientific data to say which are those young women who are unemployed and which are the sectors that have the potential to absorb them.
Okay, well, we will be getting some of that scientific data in a few moments. We will be in conversation with Stats SA, but we are also going to be in conversation with the South African Human Rights Commission as well to see what action can and will be taken in support of the families, but also to deal with racial tensions in this community. And for that, we're going to do that after the break. But for now, thank you so much to Minister Sindisiwe Chikunga, the Minister for Women, Children and People with Disabilities in the presidency. I'm Naledi Moleo, and we continue this coverage from Mankweng Magistrates Court.